Welcome to A Voice and Beyond. We have Kassandra Reinhardt. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I am well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Where are you located, Kassandra?
I'm in Ottawa, Canada, so a
Oh,
little bit far away from you.
I know, but Canada is so beautiful. I visited Vancouver a few years ago, and it reminded me a lot of one of our cities here in Australia. It reminded me of Melbourne.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it just had that kind of vibe about it. But
Mhm.
yeah, Canada is such a beautiful place. Now, not only are you in a beautiful location, but you do some beautiful work as well. You are a yin and vinyasa yoga instructor, a YouTuber. We're going to talk about that because you have literally millions of subscribers. You are an author and the face behind Yoga with Kassandra. Now, you've launched several challenges, including a 30-day challenge called Flexible Body, Flexible Mind on YouTube, and that was also on your app. I will talk to you about that one because I have a lot of questions around your philosophies about having a flexible body, creating that flexible mind, because I actually agree with you. And we'll talk about that a little later. Now, I want to start with the most basic of questions because there are so many misconceptions around yoga. So I would like to ask you, how do you best describe the practice of yoga? What is yoga?
It's actually a big question because what we think of when we talk about yoga in the Western world is maybe just a fraction of what yoga truly is. Yoga is rooted in Indian philosophy. It's quite old. So it's very much a spiritual practice, a philosophical practice as well, and really like a laid out path, you could say, and a way of life leading towards non-attachment. But when we are talking about yoga, we're usually thinking of yoga poses, going to a yoga class, moving my body, breathing techniques. So when we talk about yoga, we're talking about a system that blends or utilizes yoga poses, breath work, meditations, as well as um, ways of living your life that are all part of this system of yoga, that are all meant to promote well-being and to deepen spirituality. Now, when I teach yoga, when I'm talking about teaching yoga, I'm talking about teaching yoga poses, teaching meditation, and teaching breathing techniques. But it's just important to know that there's such a bigger context that can surround the practice of yoga, just because it does have such rich history and rich roots. But for the
Mm.
most part, when I'm talking, you said I teach yin yoga and vinyasa yoga. So those are different styles of yoga that primarily utilize yoga poses, breathing techniques, and meditation.
Mm. I had some pushback some time ago. We had a couple of guests who have a program called Yoga Voice, and the spirituality side of yoga upset a couple of people. And
Mm.
so with the spiritual side of yoga, so let's just say your faith is a particular faith, whether it's being Catholic or Christian or Jewish, whatever it is. So if you practice yoga, are you going against your faith? Is it something that is so deeply connected in that spiritual side that it contradicts religions?
I mean, yoga is a spiritual system, but it is not a religion, right? So there is a little bit of a distinction there. So I don't really see why or how it would be a cause for conflict for someone who has a strong tie to a particular faith or religion.
Mhm.
Um, However, I guess everybody is different. But at the end of the day, even when we're talking about the spirituality of yoga, we're talking about tools, techniques, practices, teachings, and wisdom that are really with the goal of finding some kind of inner peace within people, releasing attachment, releasing judgment. Like, I think these are things that most major religions would probably be in line with anyway. Not that this is my area of expertise at
No.
all.
Yes.
But no, since it's a spiritual system, it is not a religion in and of itself. So I don't really have any reason to believe why someone who is tied to a faith would feel conflicted by the spiritual aspects of yoga. And the truth is, in the West, for better or worse, a lot of that has been extracted from the practice because we're teaching yoga not only in studios, but also in places like gyms, where yoga
Yes.
is now being seen really as purely physical practice. So you kind of often will get the spirituality stripped out of the practice. That's not something I'm a fan of, but it is to say that for the people who don't want the spiritual aspect tied to their yoga practice, those classes are out there. You can find teachers and classes that strictly approach it from the physical perspective. And there can be great depth actually just by working with the physical body and just by working with the breath, like learning to cultivate your own energy. There's a lot of work that you can do. You mentioned my flexible body, flexible mind challenge. That's kind of the idea behind it, is that whenever we're challenging ourselves physically, there's a mental challenge and a mental component to that as well. So there can be great depth, even if you're only going into the practice and only approaching it from, I'm going to get a workout, or I'm going to get more flexible, or I'm going to work on my balance. Like, you might not realize it, but the deeper inner work will happen anyway.
I've heard that. I've heard so many people who have discovered yoga to be such a wonderful gateway for them in terms of discovering joy and fulfillment in life, changing their attitude towards themselves, their self-love, so many benefits. But how did you discover yoga? What was your journey into yoga?
I was very naive. I didn't know much about yoga. When I was about 18, I was coming from the world of dance. So I grew up doing a lot of ballet and other kinds of dance. And I really, really, really loved it. But it was very hard on my body, on my knees, on my hips, on my lower back. And I also was not necessarily the most flexible person. Like, I still have extreme trouble like with flexibility. I have to really keep on top of it. And a friend had just suggested, why don't I go try a yoga class, offering it to me as cross training for
Mhm.
dancers. She just thought that this would be something that would help me in my dance. So I gave it a try. I was one of those students that did not realize that yoga was this ancient system and, had so much history and philosophy and spirituality behind it. I just signed up for a yoga class thinking maybe I'll get more flexible, maybe I'll get stronger. Let's see what it's all about. So I came to it very naively, and I didn't necessarily fall in love with it right away. I had to kind of keep practicing and try different styles of yoga because it's really quite varied. And I also had to find a teacher I really like who spoke to me in a specific way. And then it really all clicked. And then I discovered, okay, not only am I getting more flexible and feeling good in my body, but there's also something like mental health wise, there's something that's happening here as well. Like, a great part of yoga is its ability to help you kind of take a step back and have a greater perspective, and to really find that difference of like, who is this little inner voice that you hear inside your head, this little inner critic? And can you separate yourself away from that and practice non-attachment towards these judgmental thoughts? Something that as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, I definitely need, especially coming from ballet, which I was very critical of myself, very much striving for perfection. So yoga came at the right time to me, where it really helped to teach me that we don't have to strive for perfection. And it really teaches you to like really be in the moment. So it was a journey, but that's how I found it. And here I am, however many years later,
Yes,
still
yes.
practicing and teaching.
What you're saying about being in that non-judgmental space too, I know you're coming from the dance world and I'm coming from the singing world, but I know as singers, we're always in our heads. We're always judging ourselves. And that inner critic is switched on 100% of the time. And that gets in the way of our performance. And
Mm.
by what you're saying, yoga would be a lovely way for us to get out of our own way.
It really helps to develop the awareness. So it's not necessarily that practicing yoga will make that little voice inside your head go away. It might, or it might not. But even if it doesn't, you're at least going to be aware of it a lot quicker, so that then you can make that decision to, okay, I hear the criticism, I hear the judgment, I can tell that I'm comparing myself to others, or I'm talking disparagingly about myself or criticizing others. You can notice it a lot quicker, and you can make the conscious decision to choose a different thought, right? To not allow yourself to indulge in this self-critical, self-criticizing behavior. So that was extremely, extremely valuable for me, because it took, I mean, up until, I was probably 20 years old or so, I hadn't even really noticed how much of my internal dialogue was critical, and quite harsh. So even just having that illumination and having that awareness around it made a big shift in a positive way.
Knowing what I know about ballet classes, because my daughter is a dancer and she did ballet for years. Basically, every time you go into a ballet class, you're being torn to shreds. You
And
body shaming. I mean, there's body shaming that goes on. There's also, like, it's down to what your little finger is doing. It's just
exactly.
You are being micromanaged and micro-critiqued. You have to be a really tough kind of person to survive the ballet world.
Oh yeah, and compared, so blatantly compared one girl to another. And
oh yes,
it's not like I was a professional or anything like that. This was just something I was doing for fun, and I had a great studio and great teachers. But even in that environment, as healthy as they could make it, it was still really hard to be a teenage girl wearing spandex and striving for physical perfection with your other girlfriends. It was just very difficult, and physically it was also very difficult as well. So I felt like, even though I felt like dance was fueling me in so many ways, and there's such a deep love for it, it was also kind of mentally and physically draining. So it was refreshing for me to move my body and express myself by movement, something that I loved from dance, but now I could do that through yoga. And yet with yoga, there was no perfection that we were trying to achieve. There was no end goal, right? You're just moving for the sake of moving. There's no ideal way of doing any one thing. And that was really hard for me in the beginning, because I was so used to, like you said, being told how to move every finger and being picked apart. I almost felt like the lack of micromanagement was very difficult to cope with, because I was like, well, what do I do with my right ankle and my left wrist, And you just have to learn to let that go, and to let go of the control, and to see what feels good for you, and to move from that space. So it took a while to get used to, but it was extremely empowering, really, really, really wonderful for me. And it did make me more flexible. It did make me stronger. It did improve my balance, so it made me better at dance through this compassionate practice.
Do you still dance?
I do. I don't do ballet, but I take like drop-in classes every now and then. Yeah.
Let's get out of that ballet class as fast as we can.
Maybe I would go back. But yeah, I do still take dance classes from time to time. The love of it has never gone away. And, I really don't want to talk disparagingly about ballet, because this, it is difficult to always be striving for perfection, but my goodness, when you see a dancer execute it, there's nothing like it. The beauty of sport is unmatched. So I love it. but it was difficult.
Yes, I know. And really, if someone wants to have a professional career as a dancer, they have to do ballet.
Yeah.
That is the foundation of all dance. That's what gives you the beautiful technique, the beautiful lines. You can always tell someone who's had that training and
Yes,
how much of
definitely.
it they've had, definitely. But in terms of where you're at now, what are some of the other benefits that you've noticed that have come along with your practice of yoga from when you started to where you're at now? Do you feel like you're a different person? Do you feel that you're in a healthier state of mind?
Oh, definitely. I mean, especially because I started when I was 18 and I'm 32 years old now. So I think part of it is just maturing and getting a little bit older. But thank goodness I had yoga through it all. I think the greatest thing it has taught me is to embrace change and to not really take things for granted. There are things that I could do before that I can't do now, and there are things that I can do now that I couldn't before. And learning not to label one thing as good and one thing as bad has been super, super, super helpful in my life. And we talk about it in the context of, the yoga mat and my yoga practice. But I really feel like the work you do on the mat does get reflected out into the world. There's a parallel that happens here. So whenever I'm faced with a certain challenge on my yoga mat, and I learn how to deal with it in a productive way, like say, for example, in my 20s, I was really into strong practices that focused on arm balances and inversions, and I found that so fun. And now in my 30s, I don't care so much about that. I don't do it quite as much. So I'm not as good as them at them anymore
Mhm.
because I'm
Mhm.
out of practice. And beforehand, I would have been really critical about myself, but now it's like I really am able to embrace the change. I have this non-attachment toward the results. So mental health wise, that's been extremely important and valuable. And I am someone that tends to be more on the stressed or anxious side. That tends to be something that I have to cultivate the tools, to deal with.
Yes, yes,
So
speaking my language there, girl.
yoga is non-negotiable. Like yoga is truly non-negotiable. It's something that I have to do on a regular basis. It helps so much, even with
Mm.
things like when my anxiety gets really bad. Sometimes I won't even really notice that I'm in the midst of like this anxiety spiral, but I'll be able to tell because I can't sleep. As soon as I notice that my sleep pattern is not good, maybe I'm having a little bit of insomnia, I know that I have some underlying stress and anxiety that I haven't processed and acknowledged. So even something as simple as training myself to be able to fall back asleep when I have insomnia, like yogic breathing has been so helpful. So I am a different person. I do think, I mean,
Yes,
maybe everyone is a different person from
yeah.
18 to 32, right?
Yes, definitely. Well, we're always evolving, we're always changing, but hopefully for the better. And it sounds like your life has undergone some amazing transformations for the better.
I'm a lot kinder to myself and
Mm,
kinder to others, I believe, because
mm.
of yoga. That's something I think I can attribute to the practice for sure.
That in itself is something, if you can achieve that in life, then that is a remarkable thing to achieve
Yeah,
because I think we are all so unkind to ourselves. And if we can learn to be kind to ourselves, then we can be kind to others. And how can you be
absolutely.
kind to other people when you're berating yourself constantly, is what
Hmm.
I think. So with yoga, there are so many different types of yoga. What are the most common ones or the most popular ones that we come across in the Western world? And what are the differences between these practices?
So most styles of yoga that we do, like physical practices of yoga, come from hatha yoga, and pretty much all styles of yoga that you would encounter at a studio or anywhere else that you practice are variations from that original hatha yoga. So I personally teach yin yoga as well as vinyasa yoga. And hatha yoga was really based on like specific practices and a philosophy versus Ashtanga yoga, which was a different philosophical system. But usually, like what we'll mostly come across, what I teach, I like to teach vinyasa yoga. So it's derived from hatha yoga, and it's a much more dynamic form of practice. I liked it because it reminded me of dance a lot. So it was very creative. There's a lot of strength, balance, and flexibility involved. The classes will be very fluid, moving in and out of poses. So it reminded me of choreography a
Yeah, I was
lot.
going to say, yeah, it sounds like
It's very creative.
choreographed. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. So that's what I kind of was practicing and ended up teaching. And then yin yoga is completely different. So yin is a passive style of yoga where you will hold one pose for 5 minutes or
Oh
so.
my gosh. You've got
And
no hope with me.
you could try it. I'm sure you could try it. So the poses are not strength based. It's all seated or lying down. So it's very flexibility focused, and it's often called the yoga of the joints because that's what we're looking to strengthen. You're looking to strengthen your joints and to work on the connective tissues of the body. So the fascia, the tendons, the ligaments. So it's passive poses, meaning you're relaxing, letting gravity get you deeper into the fold. Like if you were just to do a straight forward bend or pigeon pose, but you're holding it for a long time. So that is mentally quite challenging because you're in a pose. It's quite sensational. There's a lot maybe that you're feeling come up for yourself, maybe a lot of internal chatter. So it's quite challenging, but at the same time, because all the poses are done either sitting or lying down, it's very accessible to all levels and to all people. Whereas vinyasa can sometimes be a little bit more daunting because it requires more strength, more effort, more balance. But those are the two that I teach and that I specialize in. And I find that they're both very good counterparts to each other, one being a little bit more dynamic and the other being much more passive. So if I have a good balance of both, that's usually when I'm feeling the best in my body and mentally as well.
So if someone was starting yoga, they'd never done yoga before, which one would you suggest they start with?
They could try a vinyasa yoga class, if they go to their local studio, or even better, if they go online and they just type in yoga for beginners, they can find a great simple sequence to work from there. It really doesn't have to be overly complicated or strenuous to be valuable and to be worthwhile. The progress and the benefits of the poses are the same, whether you're at a 10% range of motion or all the way dancer level flexibility, right? We're all working the same muscle groups. We're all, working with the same kind of bones. So the benefits are the same, but yoga for beginners, just a simple either hatha yoga class or vinyasa yoga class could be wonderful. And if they want something that's a little bit more relaxing and flexibility focused, then they could look into yin yoga or restorative yoga as well.
I have done yoga, and I've shared this story before, that the first time I went to yoga, and I've only done yoga twice, and the same thing happened. But the first time I went, I started crying hysterically. And I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. And I thought, oh, this is not for me. I don't want to pay someone who's going to make me cry. And then I went and tried it again about 2 years later, and the same thing happened. So yoga makes me cry. What is that?
So that's an incredibly common phenomenon. It's called an emotional release. This is, again, when I say, you can practice yoga and think you're just working on your physical body, not tied to anything else. But the poses can kind of work their magic on you, whether you want to or not. So an emotional release is something that happens when we're in a yoga pose. I like to think about it as if I'm breaking down layers of tension in my physical body, which now makes it easier to access other tension that's living in the emotional body. You know, you might have heard this expression that emotions are stored in the hips. So, you know, people will say that if you do hip openers and hip stretches, you're more likely to cry. It's not as black and white as that. You can do any kind of pose and have any kind of emotional release. It's not always crying. Sometimes people will start giggling and laughing
Oh,
uncontrollably, not knowing why,
I
or they'll
don't
get
know.
really
Yeah.
angry.
What would be more embarrassing, crying or laughing out hysterically?
I mean, sometimes it just means there was something in you that needed to be expressed. And because you were giving yourself this permission where you were being really open with yourself, you were releasing tension from your body. Now that emotion has somewhere to go, right? Like
Yes.
there's a vehicle forward and out of it. But it is incredibly common. At the same time, some people will practice for decades and will never experience that. So it's not right or wrong to
Mm-hmm.
experience it. But if it does happen to you, just know it's normal, it's common, it happens, it's okay. And sometimes you'll know why you're having the emotional release. Like sometimes you know you need a good cry because you've been going through a hard time in your life. You know, maybe you're grieving the loss of a loved one. So it makes sense that the tears are flowing, or you're angry and you're going through a breakup, whatever, right? Sometimes we know where the emotion is coming from. So it can be really nice to allow ourselves to process it that way, like somatically. But sometimes you'll have an emotional release and you don't know what's going on. You don't even know why you're crying. And that's fine too. That's okay. You know, like there's a different kind of wisdom in your body. It's all being processed. You know, this is what we call like the alchemy of yoga. There's something that is being worked out and worked through, and you've cleared the pathway enough to allow that emotion to flow. So the best thing you can do if it does happen to you is to just let it go and let it through. The more you try to suppress it or get it under control, the harder it's probably going to be. So let yourself have the cry. It'll pass through a lot faster in that way. And, you know, try not to be too hard on yourself, because I promise you that teacher has seen that a million times.
Oh, no one said anything to me. The teacher didn't say that. She didn't say, oh, that's normal. So I
Oh,
felt like a
see, I
little,
think she should have. Yeah, I think
she
she
should.
should have.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think we need to fire that teacher. So recently you held a 30-day flexible body, flexible mind challenge. So describe what that is and what the participants did during that program and what kind of outcomes they achieved.
Yeah, that was really fun. So this year in April of 2023, I launched my newest 30-day challenge. I try to do them annually as much as possible. And I wanted to do something that was practical, but also meaningful. So instead of just doing one yoga class a day for 30 days, I wanted to add an extra component to it to help people step out of their comfort zones. So the flexible body portion meant that every day we were doing like a 10 to 20-minute yoga class focusing on increasing flexibility. So slow, stretchy, feel good flows. But then for the flexible mind portion, every day I gave people a different challenge to help them step out of our comfort zones and cultivate a flexible mind. So whether that was, you know, one of the challenges is to go in your car or go somewhere where you won't be disturbed and are alone and just scream as loud as you possibly can. Or another challenge is to write a letter to your childhood self or to your eldest self, or to make a
Wow.
gratitude list, you know. So very simple, or like try a new food that you've never tried before, or wear something in your closet that you save for special occasions and never actually put on. Like very small, simple things
So
that
cool
are
though.
actually kind of hard, you know, because it's a little step out of the comfort zone, but it's to embrace this idea of cultivating a flexible mind and just being open to new things, exploring different parts of yourself. And it was really my way of reminding my students that yes, yoga is an amazing physical practice, but there's also more to it. We can work on it to cultivate our emotional health and our mental health and our spiritual health as well. So they're just small little challenges, but we did that in April. It was really fun. And it's all still available on YouTube for free. So if anyone still wants to do it, it's just the Flexible Body, Flexible Mind Yoga Challenge. It's all there, all free. But it was a lot of fun. People were very good sports about it, and they really embraced those challenges really well.
I love that you also say that a flexible body creates a flexible mind. But I just feel even moving your body helps you. I know with me, the days that I go and do Pilates or I go to the gym, I'm
Mhm.
far more creative. I know
Right.
that every morning I have like a little 10-minute exercise regime that I do. I used to do planks and then my lower back started hurting. So obviously
Oh,
I wasn't engaging the core. I was doing 6 minutes of planking, but now
oh my God.
I do push-ups and some air squats. But I find once I do those, I just feel better. I feel like, oh, now I'm ready to start the day. Puts me in a far better mood. I can have an absolute mood shift just by moving my body.
And only 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be super long, super complicated, super hard. I think of it a lot as like an analogy of um like a pond becoming a swamp.
Mm.
You know, sometimes when it's stagnant, where we're not moving for too long, it's like we become kind of swampy, you know, our mind
Yeah.
gets cluttered. We're not vibrant, we're not creative, like you mentioned. So we really do need that movement to allow for this current of water, you know, to be flowing in and out. Otherwise, like that stagnation can be really detrimental. And I notice the same thing whenever I notice that, oh, I'm feeling maybe a little depressed, or if I start to notice I'm feeling anxious, I might not have been as consistent with my physical practice as I should be.
Mm. And I notice too with my students, when they're stood still, when they sing and they're
Mm.
not moving their bodies, it's like they're stuck in their bodies and their voices are stuck. And just
That
by
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, and just by getting students to move when they're singing, and no matter, sometimes I'll give them a silly movement and I'll say, pretend you're the agitator in a washing machine. And I'll get them to do this kind of like thing. This is the agitator and these are the
Yeah.
clothes. You know, just getting them to move, the voice starts to move. So there's a lot to be said. Not only improves your state of mind and your creativity and your energy and your attitude. There are so many benefits to just doing something. And now you're one of the first yoga instructors to launch a online teaching platform, and you have your channel Yoga with Kassandra, and you have an online community of almost 3 million subscribers. How did that happen?
I don't know.
That's
I
incredible. When did you launch?
So my first YouTube video I started in April of 2014. So next April will be 10 years. So I've been doing this for a little while, right?
Mhm.
And I've been very, very consistent. Even in the beginning, you know, it took a long time to get subscribers and to get views. But even when no one was watching, I still put out a video every week. You know, I acted as if the people were there, and I just trusted that they would come and that they would find me if the time was right. So I took it very seriously while still having fun with it, but I really wanted to prioritize that and give it its best shot at succeeding. I also just loved it. Like from the first video that I made, I knew that this was something I wanted to do, and I was really excited about it. So that really helped keep me motivated and energized for those first few years, because you're not really seeing big numbers or anything like that. But that's it. You know, I started and I just simply did not stop. And I tried to do something new and different every year. And I really tried to challenge myself to grow and to, you know, try new things and to offer new programs or to branch out in different ways just to see what would work. A lot didn't work, some did. I kept
Mhm.
with those. You know, there's a lot of ventures that I tried that didn't pan out, but I let myself be very creative with the endeavor. And yeah, slowly but surely, here we are with over 2 million subscribers, more than that on YouTube. So it's been really great, and very surreal, because I never imagined that it would become this popular. There's no way,
Yes,
but it did.
but the what you just said there about consistency, that is key if you're going to launch any kind of podcast,
Mhm.
YouTube channel. You have to show up every week, or however often you promise the subscribers or the listeners or the viewers that you're going to turn up. You need to
Yeah,
be there, and it will come, it will happen. It just takes
exactly.
time, but it takes consistency. And with those sessions that you have on YouTube, how long do they normally go for? Because I know you do yoga sessions on there. So how long are they for? And how successfully does it work for the actual viewer? I mean, are they getting the same benefits as someone who's in person in a studio?
It's such a good question. So my classes, the lengths vary a lot. I have a lot of 10-minute morning yoga classes. I would say that's probably one of the things I'm most known for are my short 10-minute sessions. But I also have classes that are up to 90 minutes long. So
Mhm.
I really do try to have a wide variety of class lengths for people who want something longer and people who want something shorter. In terms of what will you get online versus in person, of course, it's not the same, but I definitely wouldn't say that it's inferior. There are a lot of advantages to teaching online or to doing a class online that you can't get in person. So, of course, online, the disadvantage is that you don't have a teacher there in the room with you to be able to physically assist you in each and every pose. That means that there's a greater responsibility for me as an online yoga teacher to make sure that I am crystal clear in the way that I am guiding students in and out of
Mhm.
pose. I
Mhm.
want the best compliment I ever get, the best way you can make me happy is to tell me that you were able to do my entire yoga class without looking at the video. Just by listening to me, you were able to do it. That means I did a really,
Wow.
really good job at
Yes.
cueing you safely. So, of course, I'm not there in person. I can't answer questions directly. I can't physically assist. However, the benefit, first of all, is that these are free classes. I don't know how it is in Australia, but here in Canada, yoga classes are expensive. Okay. It's at least
Yes.
$20.
Oh,
Like
here yeah, yeah. I mean, with
15, $25.
Pilates is the same. It's 30 to $35 a class.
Exactly.
Casual,
It's
a casual
expensive.
class. Yeah.
And you also have to factor in people have to drive there and back. And for a lot of people, that also means finding childcare. So you're paying for a babysitter, you're paying for a class, you're using gas to get yourself to the studio. Like there's a great privilege that comes with being able to actually even afford to attend studio classes.
Hmm.
So that's a barrier that gets removed with online. You don't have to go anywhere. You can practice at home. If your dogs or your toddlers are crawling all over you, it's totally fine because no one's watching anyway. And that's the other thing that's really nice. A lot of people hold themselves back from trying yoga because they worry that they're not fit enough. They're not flexible enough. They're not going to fit in. They're not going to be comfortable. So giving yourself permission to just do it at home where you can do it in your pajamas and no one's looking and it's all okay. You can just at least give it a try to see if it's for you. There's way less pressure with online yoga classes in that sense. And overwhelmingly, if you go to any of my videos and you read the comments, some of the top comments that you'll find for people is saying, I've been practicing with you every day for the last 3 years. Or,
Wow. That's
like I get
massive.
that all the time, all the time. So it's different than in person, but I found that especially with my shorter classes, it's realistic, it's practical, and they're actually able to commit to doing it on a regular basis versus, trying to make it out to the studio once a week. So there's both are great. I highly recommend if you can make it to the studio, do it. It's super nice to have hands-on and in-person feedback. But in the meantime, don't hold yourself back from trying it out. There's a lot of depth and a lot of growth that can happen from online, and it's free, which is great.
Mhm. Yes, and you talk about mobility, the benefits of improving flexibility and mobility with morning stretches. So my question is, why the morning? And what are some of the most basic stretches we could do? What's something really basic?
I mean, I like the morning. Of course, people can practice at any time of the day. Sometimes I do it in the afternoon, sometimes bedtime, but I do like in the morning to at least get a few quick stretches.
Mhm.
It's less about the physical poses and the stretches themselves and more about carving time in the morning that is just for you. Like really time where you get to put yourself first. You get to think about, how you're feeling, how you want your day to go, what's important right now, what's going on with your body. Like having just that time, especially if you have a very busy day ahead, and you know that during the day you tend to be very outwardly focused, caring for other people, working a difficult job. Like it's nice to have that little pause
Mm.
where you can be the only focus, and really care for yourself in that way. So I do like the morning classes for that, especially because I always try to, in my 10-minute morning yoga classes, I always try to get people to choose a one-word intention just to set the tone for their day, just so there's a little bit of purpose and mindfulness and awareness that they can carry with them, even when they're off the yoga mat and just going about their daily lives. So I really like that. In the morning, super simple poses. I don't know if you're familiar with cat and cow, but it's just when you're on hands and
No.
knees. So cat and cow is just when you're on hands and knees. So your hands are under your shoulders, your knees are underneath your hips, like a little table pose. And
Yes.
then you're just moving, flexing, and contracting your spine. So dropping the belly down, a little cat, like how a cat pose when they're angry, they
Yes.
kind of round their
Yes.
backs. So you're
Yes.
making cat shape, and then you're
Yes.
reverse cow pose, which is like a back bend. So doing those two poses a few times is a great way to get some movement in the spine. That's wonderful in the morning to get a big boost of energy. If you've been sleeping for long, hopefully, 6 to 9 hours or so, that's wonderful, but you can have a lot of stiffness along the spine. And if you know you're
Yes.
going to be sitting a lot, it's
Hmm.
really nice to just get those movements in. And I always do a low lunge. Any kind of lunge in the morning to stretch out your hip flexors is really great. Again, especially if you know you're going to be sitting in a chair for long periods of time. Sitting in a chair is something that can cause a lot of tension and shortening in our hip flexors. So every morning, if we can just try to counteract that and prepare ourselves by doing any kind of simple lunge, that's really my go-to. So cat and cow, low lunge, those are very simple ones that people can start doing right away, pretty much.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And what if someone feels anxious or stressed? Is there a particular thing they can do to help with that?
So I would consider this my area of expertise because I feel a lot of stress and anxiety. What works the best for me is to do a combination of poses that really help to get the energy moving, and then poses that really relax. So often when people are talking about yoga for stress and yoga for anxiety, they're trying to calm you down with a guided meditation or slow stretches. For me, I find that if I'm really nervous and anxious, I can't get there yet. I actually need to move and get rid of a
Ah,
big burst of energy, and
yes,
then I can quiet down. So
likewise.
even if you just do jumping jacks, if you just do
Hmm.
like 20 jumping jacks
Hmm.
before you try to do a meditation, or before you try to, do some deep belly breathing, I find it to be much, much, much more beneficial and much more useful in the long run. So get the energy out, do something vigorous, whatever it is, like just get your heart pumping a little bit, and then focus on the rest and relaxation and the mindfulness. It's more effective in my experience anyway.
That's a great idea because I feel like that. I feel that when I'm anxious or stressed, I have so much adrenaline
Exactly, exactly.
and we're trying to calm down. Like
Yes.
we go, okay, let's breathe. But it actually doesn't always work. So maybe that's a great thing to do next time
Yeah.
that I feel like that is to do that energy release first and then go into the breathing.
A couple push-ups, even, doing
Yeah.
a little sprint,
Yes.
jumping jacks,
Yes.
whatever. Just
Yes.
something to not exhaust yourself, but to get that nervous energy out. Because
Mhm.
otherwise, I find that if I'm really anxious and stressed and I try to just sit and close my eyes and meditate, there's so much going on in my head. It's I end up feeling worse because then I feel like, oh, it's not working. Nothing's working, so I feel worse than even before I tried. So yeah, letting the energy out and then getting into your relaxation is really nice.
Mm. I love that you talk about self-care here because that's what a lot of this is. And you're talking about doing these activities in the morning, which is something that I advocate for as well, because I have a morning routine that I set up some years ago that has absolutely changed my life. And I believe how you set your morning is the tone that you set for the rest of the day. And for me, my morning starts with a meditation. I do some physical activity, which is 10 minutes. Then, I mean, that doesn't include what I do at the gym or Pilates. This is just my morning routine before I leave the house. And
Yeah.
then I have my gratitude journal. And in that gratitude journal, I too set intentions for my day. And it's incredible how that can just change the way that you approach your day. And in fact, when I go to work, people say to me, oh, you've got this energy about you. You're always so positive. And, you're just like this ever ready battery. You're just on charge all the time. And you know what I say to people? I work at it every day.
Right. Yes.
It doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very intentional around that. I want to feel good. I want to feel positive. I want to have a good mindset. And especially if it's a day of teaching where, and when you're working with clients or you're working with students and you're doing those 8-hour days where you have people that are relying on you and you're giving so much of yourself, you have to have something in the tank for you.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're being influenced by other people's energies and moods, it's like it's nice to have your own base level of this is
Yes.
where I'm at. But it's nice, because you're touching on something that's so important, which is discipline. We think of discipline
Mm.
often as motivation, but the two are very different. Motivation wanes, it waxes and wanes. Sometimes we're in the mood and sometimes we're not. Sometimes it's easy and it feels natural to do our routines and to do our self-care practices. It's effortless. And sometimes it's really hard. And for some reason or another, we don't feel like it. But discipline is what keeps you going, and keeps you accountable and keeps that battery charged, but I'm glad you tell them that you work at it and that it's not just you being naturally blessed, because I do think that's a common misconception, like joy and positivity, optimism. Like these are things that I think I have, but I work at it. I
Mm.
work at it. I probably wouldn't be this joyful if I didn't have so many practices that help anchor me. And, like I work with gratitude a lot and intention setting. It matters. It makes a huge difference.
Yes. And sometimes too, I love another thing. I call it uh, segment intending. When
What's that?
okay, oh, I'm going to teach
Never
you
heard of that.
something. Okay. So it's like, just say you've been at work all day
Hmm.
and you've been in that mindset, okay, I've been at work. And then you arrive home and you're stepping into your domestic part of your life. Could be you have a partner at home, or some people may have their children at home.
Hmm.
And so when you get home, you take a moment in the car to set the intention for the next segment in your life.
Oh, I love that.
So that way you leave the office in the car and
Mm.
then you step into the person that you want to become going into that next segment of your life. It could even be, now I've done this recently. I had a difficult student recently and I was starting to feel a little like, oh gosh, I've got this student again coming in, like, and she's coming in 10 minutes time.
Yeah.
So I started setting the intention that I was going to surround her with love.
Hmm.
So I just went, I am surrounding you with love. Now, can I tell you that next lesson was the complete opposite of every other lesson? You know, so it's setting the intention. It could be you going into a business meeting and your
Right.
intention is that you want to have a favorable outcome for all parties.
Hmm.
You know, so yeah, so that's segment intending.
I love that. I'm definitely going to implement that. That's nice.
There are times you need to. I believe in life. Yeah, there are
Yeah.
times you need to. But anyway, we're getting off the track here. Um, so what are the things that you do for self-care other than yoga? What other practices do you have?
Something I do every day, I do go for a 30-minute walk every single day. I've done that for years. I don't feel quite right if I don't walk every day. I find I get my best ideas when I'm walking. Like I process things a lot better. So definitely a 30-minute walk, usually around 10 a.m. is when I'll go do that. And every night before bed, I journal a little bit. So just a few sentences every day. But because it's so short, I have been able to stick with it and to be consistent. This is the 5th year now of me doing it every single day. So that's been really good. So I do that. Those are probably the main ones that I'm the most
Mm,
consistent with on
mm.
a day-to-day basis.
And they're all short. You see,
Yes.
that's what I think people where they get it wrong is that their goals are unattainable.
Yeah.
And then they set themselves up for failure and they give up. Whereas
Yeah.
like usually my meditations are 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just scroll through YouTube and I just find something that resonates with me that
Right.
morning.
Yeah.
10 minutes, maybe on the weekend, it might be a 15-minute one. My
Yeah.
little exercise regime might only take 10 minutes. My gratitude journal might only take me 10 minutes while I'm eating breakfast. They're not big chunks of time
But
spent
they
with
have a big impact.
huge impact,
Yeah.
huge impact. And as I said, especially voice teachers that are listening, when you're giving so much of yourself, you need to have something in the tank for you. When you're teaching those long days, that last student should have the same level of teaching that the first student has. Just
Mm.
because you only have half a tank, that student is still paying full price. They don't get a discount for your half a tank.
That's so true. Yeah.
So you need to take care of yourself. You need to have practices in place that makes you turn up as your best. And that allows you too to hold safe spaces for other people when you're doing the work on yourself, mentally, physically, emotionally. It allows you to hold space for others, to be
Yeah.
authentic and genuine too. Now, you have these beautiful cards as well. We talked about your cards, and they are I Radiate Joy daily affirmation cards. So tell us how they came about and how they work, and maybe you need to pull a card on me.
Okay. Um, this is like, I love tarot cards, oracle decks, affirmation cards. So I really jumped on this opportunity to create my own, but it ties into this idea of setting an intention every day. That's something that I like to do. And I like to work with a lot of affirmations. I find that
Mm-hmm.
they're a really great way to quiet down my inner critic and to put a more positive spin on my internal dialogue. So something that I'll do most days is to just draw a card from my deck and to have that be my affirmation for my day and my intention for the day.
Mm-hmm.
So the suit or the deck is built out of 4 different suits that all revolve around health. So physical health, affirmations for physical health, mental health, emotional health, and spiritual health. So
Right.
all in there, very holistic and simple and easy to use. So the way that I use them most of the time is to just pick one at the beginning of the day to help it set my tone and to set the intention for the day. I also like to use them in my yoga practice. So either picking a card before I start my practice to, again, set the intention for the practice itself, like for this yoga class. Or something that I've also done is to kind of pick a card per pose in a yin yoga class and to like internally repeat that affirmation as I'm practicing the pose. So a million different ways that you can practice with them, but I'm very, very, very happy with them. And it feels very surreal to actually have my very own deck that's out in stores and everywhere. And I can go pick one, but I have to go get my deck. It's over there. Do you want me
That's
to drop
okay.
it for you?
That's okay. Yes, let's do this.
All right.
I'll share with the listeners that I was given a deck of cards not so long ago where you have to pull two cards. You have to think about a problem or set an intention around something that you're going through in your life. And you pull two cards randomly. And I'd never done anything like this before. And I don't look at the cards when I shuffle them, but it's the weirdest thing. I will feel a current go up my arm when it's the right card. And these cards kick me in the butt. Like they tell me, honestly, even something I don't want to hear, but I know to be the truth, they give it to me. But I don't do them every day. I just do them randomly when I feel like I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And they speak the truth. So people who think this is woo-woo, I tell you what, you want to get yourself some cards and have them tell you.
Oh yeah, try it out. You don't lose anything from trying it.
And then there was, when I was handed the cards, there were two women at another table who saw me with the cards, and they asked me to pull the cards for them. And I'd only just been given them. I wasn't sure what I was doing, but once again, I trusted, and I felt this energy radiate up my arm when the card was in my hand that needed to be pulled. You pulled two, and both of them cried.
Oh.
Because it was spot on. How weird is that? I mean, you wouldn't say it's weird because this is what
it's lovely do. Synchronicity. Yeah, it meant that there was great meaning for them. Okay, I've shuffled. And I'm just going to pick one.
Yes.
So I picked from the spiritual suit.
Yes.
So it says, I have all the answers within me. And then your affirmation that I picked is, I trust that my life is unfolding exactly as it should. It's this card here. I trust that my life is unfolding exactly as it should. So that is your affirmation.
Okay. Well, I kind of feel, look, on this show, I just talk openly. I share. Sometimes I overshare. But I feel like I'm going through a really big shift in my life. And that is what my cards have been telling me, is to trust, to know that I have the answers within me, and to let go.
Oh, not always an easy one.
That's what I mean. The cards have been kicking me in the butt, and you just kicked me again.
Sorry.
You kicked me when I was in the curb with the other cards.
I'm kicking you with support and acknowledgement that everything's going to be okay. Your life is unfolding exactly as it should.
It is. I'm going through, I don't know. It's like the word energetic shift came to me the other day. I don't even know what that means.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Right? I wonder how that's going to come up for you. You'll probably gain more clarity around it with time.
Yes. So it's just like I am going through a massive shift, a massive change in my life right now. There's so many things that are happening. And so I'm just trying to embrace Just
So trust and let go.
trust that everything that needs to happen will happen in the way that it should do and needs to.
Wonderful. I believe
Now,
it. I believe it for you.
you have two books as well. You have a journey, like your yoga journey, which is a guided journal, and Year of Yoga and Yin Yoga. So am I getting those right there with
Yeah, you are.
Mandela
Yeah.
Publishing?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's right. Yeah. With the cards. So at the same time that we came out with the I Radiate Joy deck, we also came out with the My Yoga Journey guided journal. And, you know, we've been talking about this throughout the whole podcast, but the journal was really to help people take 2 minutes before they practice and 2 minutes after they practice. So one, to set the tone, to set an intention, to reflect on how they're feeling right now. And then after their practice, to take the time to write down something that they're grateful for and to further reflect on how their practice has shifted them. So super simple, short practices, because again, that's what I think helps people be the most consistent, but
Yes.
still effective and meaningful enough just to help them like deepen their experience of their yoga practice so that it's not mindless, you know, that they can really be fully present to the experience. So that's the yoga journey journal. So very simple, 2 minutes before your mat and 2 minutes when you're done class. And then a few or 6 months before those came out, my newest book came out, Year of Yoga, which is just like a beautiful labor of love that I put together. So lots of classes and sequences and practices that you can do that are aligned with the seasons and with the lunar phases.
Oh,
And
wow.
because I'm an online yoga teacher, of course, all the classes, the sequences are laid out in the book with pictures, but I also added a QR code and a website that people can go to, and they can follow along with the online yoga class version of that sequence. So you can either do it via video or you can just follow along with the book, because I just wanted to make the book a little bit extra special. So I really love that one.
Sounds beautiful. I love that it aligns with the lunar and the seasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So what are you up to next?
So right now I'm actually working, my next project is going to be a training for yoga teachers to teach how I personally theme, sequence, and cue my yoga classes. So it's like a continuing education training program. I finished filming and editing it now. Now we just have to work on building the training manual to go along with it. And hopefully I'll be ready to have that out sometime in the fall. But I really like doing training programs for instructors just to help them refine their skills and maybe tackle any gaps that they might have in their training. I find that's really fun. And I love to talk about cueing and sequencing and coming up with really creative themes for your classes. So that's my next big project in the works.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. In wrapping up, do you have any advice for our listeners in regards to self-care or to yoga or anything you feel that you would like to share with them that will help them?
Well, I think a guiding philosophy that has always helped me, there's kind of two. I always come back to this quote, a rising tide lifts all boats. So this idea of turning towards or turning comparison or competition into collaboration, right? So especially if you are in a field where a lot of other people are doing the same kind of thing that you're doing, you know, maybe you get a little bit competitive. I don't know if it's the same as a vocal coach, but yoga teachers can certainly experience that. So I try to stay grounded in that. A rising tide lifts all boats. What's good for others is good for me. I want other people to be successful. I want to be other people's cheerleaders. I do believe that that energy gets redirected back to me. And I do come back to this other quote, which I think is Gabby Bernstein, and it's a grateful heart.
Love her.
Yeah, a grateful heart is a magnet for miracles. I really try to hold that. You know, we've talked about gratitude a lot, but that's a really great anchoring point. Even when things are very difficult, if you focus on what you do have and what is going well, it can really help to call more of that in your life. So that's probably what I would what I would add on.
Beautiful. Well, Kassandra, we're going to share all your links in the show notes to your books, your cards, your website, to your YouTube channel, anything that you would like our listeners to have access to. I appreciate your time. I've loved spending time with you and talking to you about all this stuff. I've learned a lot about yoga. I hope our listeners will listen to this with an open mind and an open heart also. So thank you again. Best wishes with everything, and look forward to connecting sometime in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a lovely discussion.
Sure was. Thank you. Bye.